do it live.
Okay. No.
We'll do it live. F it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
What is up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Nintendo Talk Live. I am Bobby, the Nintendo Guru, joined by the second most annoying person in all that I know, next to Sean Capri, Luke Lohr. What is up, Luke?
Hey, guys, it's Luke like Connery and Lohr like the pants. Right.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah. That's how you remember it.
Luke like Connery, Lohr like the pants. Pretty much.
Yeah.
You nailed it. You're right there. Real quick, Andrew, what is your Twitter handle? I probably have to add you to Twitter. It might be why. I don't understand why you couldn't message me on Twitter. I thought it was open for everybody, but no problem. So, for those that don't know who you are, Luke, do you do anything on the internet?
I'm Guy on the internet. I'm probably one of several guests you've ever had in the 48 podcasts you do.
Yes.
That does not have his own podcast currently.
Yeah.
And then you're following me up with Dave Moore tonight, who I think the two of you don't compete with followers. I think you compete with number of podcasts you make.
Yeah, pretty much.
So I'm Guy that does nothing except tweet opinions about things that no one cares about.
Okay, I got you. That makes sense now. Luke here is been following us and everything we do over here on the YouTube channel for a little while now. At the beginning of the summer probably is when we started to actually talk. Actually, when this whole show kind of started is when we started to interact a little bit more. Then the whole Splatoon thing fired up, and then you started to come around a lot more. Then all of a sudden you kind of blipped. You don't like Nintendo no more, and I want to know, why do you hate Nintendo? That's the first question.
First of all, like most modern gamers, I love Nintendo.
Okay, here comes the backhanded compliment. Go ahead.
I think we all do. We all love Nintendo. Mm-hmm. What we don't like is Nintendo's flip-flop-flapping around with their dedication towards a certain type of gamer. And as we evolve as gamers, sometimes Nintendo evolves in a different direction. So I think that's truly, like, the jokes aside, that's what's happened. You know, people have gone and grown in different directions and had their phases. But I am eternally grateful for Nintendo, and I absolutely love the Switch. You know, like many people, I was jaded from the Wii U era and the lack of Virtual Console.
Okay. I'll let you. I'm not gonna let you slide. Like, it's an acceptable answer. I'll let it go. Essentially, you hate Reggie and you hate Nintendo. I got it. I understand.
I liked Reggie when he was about kicking butt, taking names, and playing games. But then he was like, you know what, guys? Let's keep this waggle thing going. I was like, Reggie.
Yeah. That was kind of lame. What have you been playing a lot lately? Because, like I said, for a while you were playing Splatoon all the time, and I think that just kind of went away for a lot of people. But what have you been playing a lot lately?
I was playing a lot of Splatoon because it was summertime. I'm a teacher, so I had all this great time where I could just jump in with the super indie fans, play games with you, watch every live stream, and just have a blast with you guys. Get killed by Flux Depose and Jason Lacey and all them.
No kidding.
But then when school started, I had very little time by comparison, so I had to catch archives of stuff. Of late, specifically, I have been in a unique holding pattern because I decided to plunge in on the Xbox One X, 4K TVs, and so I've been actually digging through the backlog, playing through stuff that's in my backlog while I wait for the Xbox One S, and then I've been X, and then I've been selective in what games I can purchase whilst waiting for X, but also balancing, monies and whatnot, because it's a big investment to $500 on a system that plays the same games. Yeah. So I'm curious to see how that decision will play out for me. But I've been playing Ghost Recon Wildlands. I just kind of put in a ton of time into that. Thoroughly enjoyed myself. It's beautiful in 4K. I did not start playing it until I had a 4K TV.
Okay.
So I've been enjoying the depth and the visuals there, and I did not expect to, because when I first played it, I was like, But I thoroughly enjoyed that. I have Shadow of War ready to go. The most blasphemous thing I can tell you on Nintendo Talk Live is that I have not yet played Odyssey. I purchased it for my girlfriend. It stayed in her Switch. It stayed in her Switch, in my defense. I have a wonderful, beautiful girlfriend. Hello, Hillary. I hope she's watching right now. She's out of town. But it stayed in her Switch. And we chose, again, because of the X, didn't buy 2 copies at once. So I plan on it. I'm so excited to play it. It looks beautiful. It looks lovely. She adores it. I'm so excited to chase some moons. I just haven't gotten to yet.
You really disappoint me. Oh my god.
But I have gotten all the shrines in Breath of the Wild and beaten the trials, which I don't think you've done yet. So
I did not beat the trials.
That's right.
I do have all the shrines. So
now.
What do you mean now? Like, back off, man. Well, the trials made me go back to get the shrines, if I'm being honest. Like, because I started to play and I was like, oh, this is something's got to give here. Like, this is hard. I need to get more hearts. So that's what I basically did. I'm saving my Mario chat for 10 o'clock, which is in 2 hours, when I get Dave Moore on, because me and him have a conversation about this. I gotta get to the bottom of all his nonsense.
Is he not? How's he feel?
That's what I want to find out exactly. Because Sean said something the other day on Nintendo, on If We Ran Nintendo, that like I guess him and Johnny Casino were upset about it because it didn't live up to the hype, and they feel like the game isn't as good as everybody's saying, and so I just kind of want to have a little chat with that and kind of see where that all goes. But
hype is the biggest enemy of game enjoyment. It truly is.
Absolutely.
It takes us away from what we would just normally just pop in and enjoy. You know, those 7 out of 10, 6 out of 10 games that appeal to me specifically or you specifically.
Yeah.
Hype can absolutely destroy our enjoyment of a game, and that's I think the biggest thing as we get older and we mature. We have to remember, if I need to have fun. I don't care if they're having fun. I need to have fun. And
exactly. I'm the one that plunked down $60. What do I care what other people are saying? Like, it's about me. It's about my enjoyment, and I should go into it like with eyes. Go in with your eyes closed and let the game open the eyes for you, and go, okay, this is what I like. This is what I like, and such. So I feel like that's where people need to rely heavily on things. I was looking at today. I was looking at the numbers, dude. Mario Odyssey has sold 90% of its stock in Japan. Like, that is insane to think that 90% of the run of the game is sold already. And then the other thing too is I think it just tipped over 2 million copies worldwide. Like, dude, this console is a juggernaut. It's like the people that are here really are craving the games. And when good games are hitting, they're getting bought up like madness. Now, my question, what I'm curious about, is if Odyssey can reach what Zelda was. Obviously, when Zelda launched, there was nothing on the console at the time. So it kind of, everybody bought one. You know what I mean? But like with Odyssey, there's a lot of games still out there that people can pick and choose. And not only that, there was only 2 million, there was only 2 million units sold of the Switch when, Breath of the Wild hit. Where this one, there's a little bit more. So it's kind of curious. I'm kind of curious to see what the end result attach rate will be on both games to see where exactly it'll fall. But if anything, Nintendo's doing a hell of a job right now in selling games. Like, they're definitely moving games and consoles, so it's exciting.
I think strictly on an economic sense, we're going to see Mario outpace Zelda, but by quite a bit. I think one character identifiability, which is not a real word, but the idea that Mario is such a recognizable character will give it that longer lasting tail. Yeah. If anything, I think Breath of the Wild is going to last longer than any traditional Zelda game we'd seen before, by way of the fact that it's a reinvention of that series and people continue to talk about it. And it has DLC legs, which previous Zelda mainline games didn't get, with respect to Hyrule Warriors, which I love and I do hope makes it to Switch. It doesn't have that staying power that Mario typically has, which is understandable. But also, Odyssey can appeal to many demographics. I think there's a barrier to entry with Breath of the Wild that either age or skill gates will keep certain people from experiencing, the bulk of what it has to offer. Whereas Odyssey, I think you can get through quite a bit of that game based on what I've read and watched and seen my girlfriend, who's a much more casual gamer. She can experience quite a bit of Odyssey. She will not be able to experience a lot of Breath of the Wild. So I think you'll see a longer trend and a higher attach rate from Odyssey, and Breath of the Wild will be a bit, and I hesitate to use this word, but a bit more of the hardcore gamer. Will get more out of it. But
no, and I agree.
Either way,
I agree. It's definitely a hardcore game, Breath of the Wild. Like that, dude. You need to. I feel. That's not a game you go by if you haven't played games before. Like if that's your first time playing a game, that's the game you play. Good luck. Like it's going to be tough, and I also feel like just the open world capacity of it lends itself to be like you should be a little bit of an experienced gamer. You should have played a little bit with it. Although I go and say that, and then I look at my wife and Chelsea's a little different because Chelsea plays a lot of games, but my wife, she just went from not playing anything at all to playing Fallout 4, and I was blown away to watch her just progress in that game and do what she did. Where I'm blown away to see it's crazy too because she'll play that. She wants nothing to do with Zelda, but she's interested in Skyrim. And I'm like, how do you go from but she likes Bethesda for some reason. I don't know what it is. Yeah. She likes Bethesda.
But you talked about Tony, you paused her from playing Fallout 4 and she walked up and she watched, Link's step out an overview of the Great Plateau.
Yeah.
She was able to appreciate that. Again, there's an appeasement there to just visual fidelity. It's a beautiful game.
Yeah, exactly.
In a minimalist sense with a unique art style. And I will tell you, I was not at all excited for the Switch, nor Breath of the Wild. I despised the art style in every preview sense until it came out, until I saw my girlfriend with her Switch. And then I was like, I want one of these because I like new toys. I like new tech. And that's where I like to put what little funds I have for that. And then I was like, well, if I'm getting a new toy, I need to play Zelda. And then I played it and it was like, oh, wow, this is absolutely incredible. But you know what's interesting about Breath of the Wild, Bobby?
What's that?
Nintendo has this absolute gift for creating titles that are approachable, and so many of their more recent Mario games have safety nets, for lack of a better term, for younger gamers. Invincibility mode in Star Fox Zero. There's a certain star or cat suit I believe you can get in 3D World, and then Odyssey has, I think, a more kid-friendly approach so that you can play without terrible consequences. Breath of the Wild didn't have that, and I thought that was interesting because it bucks the traditional or more recent traditional Nintendo trend of, hey, just play. It doesn't matter if you die.
Well, even this Mario game has assist mode, where it protects you and stuff, and Mario Kart has assist mode where you won't fall off the sides and stuff. So it's definitely I like that, but I also I grew up in an era where there was no safety nets. It was kind of just go do your thing. You're gonna die a million times. Go have at it, and you learn from that. I feel like it's like playing, for lack of a better term, it's like playing Rock Band or Guitar Hero for the first time, and you're playing at easy mode, you're only using 3 fingers. Well, when you try to start adding, it gets very difficult. It gets hard just to add a 4th finger or a 5th finger or 4 fingers and whatever the hell you're doing. I don't know how much.
Sure, I got you.
But it's hard to get up and do all that, the harder tabs and stuff. I feel like starting out difficult is easier to get better than to have that assist mode on. But I don't know. Some people might just adapt better and get better as time goes on.
I wonder if we're being old man Lucas and old man Robert when it comes to that. I don't know, the baby mode's for babies and I can't tell if I'm being grumpy on that or if it's just the idea that it's just a new wave, new generation, new gamers, and they get to enjoy what they enjoy.
Yeah, exactly. What speaking of which, when you talk about old man Lucas and old man Robert. What's your first Nintendo system?
Game Boy. It was green.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it. I think I've told this story. We were not a family that was blessed with a ton of money or anything like that. We had fantastic, hardworking parents. But games were still bad. Like you didn't play games. They hurt your brain and they hurt your eyes, and you don't do that. You get outside and you play and you read books and. So my parents started to come around the idea, and so first it was Game Boy, and that was the best. I absolutely loved my Game Boy, and then slowly but surely we got Nintendo. But when I got the Nintendo Entertainment System, it was a gift from my late grandfather who just had it in a closet. It was Nintendo, and when we got that regular Nintendo 8-bit Nintendo 64 was just coming out. And then we got Super Nintendo, and then my money was put towards Genesis, and I started to play older games and expose myself to various types there. I did not get a current system until I had saved up tons of money and late into the PlayStation 1 era, when DualShock was packed into the system. Mm-hmm. That was when I got to buy my current system of sorts. But I played regular Nintendo and Super Nintendo ad nauseum. Never owned a 64, but played it quite a bit because I would trade with my neighbors. Like my Canadian twin Sean has a neighbor Matt. I had neighbor Joe, and we traded systems regularly and whatnot. I have very fond memories of all the Nintendo systems, sans Virtual Boy, which I always wanted but never got.
Yeah.
Did.
Real quick, Joey Splats. No, this is my Mutant Mud shirt. This is not a Chicken Wiggle shirt. So, we'll clear. I just wanted to clarify that for you, sir. Yeah, it's crazy to think like how we got the consoles we got growing up. Like, my first console was the Atari 2600. So, I just remember my dad showing up with it, and I'm like, what is this thing? Like, you put cartridges in it, and you could play games, and it's like, just blew me away that, like, this was something we could do, and it was like, this is okay. Like, I'm not going to get yelled at for doing this. Although, we were always told, like, if I was in the bedroom, because we used to have the Atari 26 hooked up in my parents' bedroom, and if we were playing the Atari 2600, and it was like a nice day out, my dad would be like, get your ass outside. Like, you're not sitting inside all day. Like, go now. Go. And we would have to go outside. So we were typically relegated with video games in the early goings was, rainy days or nighttime. That was when you played video games. Otherwise, you went out and you played with your friends and did all that stuff. And I feel like today it's like totally different. Kids just play whenever they want to play. And it's more acceptable or accepted than it was, when we were growing up. Like, now it's more or less like you don't do that stuff. So
yeah, it's accepted. I don't know that acceptable applies to everyone.
Accepted is
one of the things that's strange. I'm very fortunate that I get to work with kids, and I get to one, see how they are growing up, and two, hear how their parents are influencing them or allowing them to grow up. One of the two. Yeah. And I'm the cool teacher because I love video games. I play games all the time. Yeah. But I often talk to them about balance. You have to, be outside or get some exercise or whatever. And I don't mean you need to be an athlete. I don't mean you need to be, a bookworm. But you have to have balance. You can't just be all or one or the other. And some people totally don't care. Once I was getting older, it was all games. I would send people away from my door that wanted to play outside in the snow, and I'd be like, "Go! I'm playing Metal Gear Solid 2." Go away.
I'm not playing outside in snow. That was my thing. Like, I'd be like, my parents would be like, "Hey man, go play, go build a snowman." No, I'm not building a snowman. I'm gonna play, I'm going to play Mario. I'll go play some snow levels in Mario. That's the extent of it. Like, I am not going out in the snow. Never going to happen. So yeah, that's definitely not a that's definitely a no go for me.
Mm-hmm.
So the Game Boy is your original. What was like? Because you didn't get like a brick Game Boy, so you didn't.
No,
have the
I did, but it was the colored versions. So it was not the original.
When I say brick, I mean the gray one, like
with the purple buttons. Right?
Yes, the original one. The original. You had more of a color one, right?
It was the green brick, so it was like when they not relaunched, but kind of remarketed the Game Boy.
Yes.
They had those, cool clear boxes with
Yeah.
slots for your games and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh man, I thought it was the second coming of games. It was amazing.
Here goes Sean. Here goes Sean with your nonsense. The one thing I'm going to say to you just now, because you told me to tell you, you are starting to get a little pixelated. So
Okay.
so cut the Mega Dads off. They're done.
Who are they?
Exactly.
They are.
Get rid of the Mega Dads, all right? Come on, man. Crashy's in the house. She's Sean needs to give her orange slices, and that's basically why she comes to the show, is to get that. The Game Boy. What was what was your favorite game on the Game Boy?
Oh man, favorite? I don't know, but I can tell you I have very fond memories of a couple of them. Link's Awakening was one of them, because I essentially, that was the first game that I began to understand that a game could be more than just point shoot or run jump. Because I had Super Mario Land, which was the weirdest Mario 2D platformer, but it was fun. I loved it. I didn't know better. It was really cool. But that in Link's Awakening, I started to realize, this is a world where my actions and my decisions can play a story out. And then I remember light bulb moments with Samus Return of Samus in Metroid 2. Mario Land 2, I remember never being good at Mega Man, but loving it. I loved the Wario Land game. Where you, really good. I loved that one. And then I played the Star Trek game a lot. Didn't understand part of it. I mean, like, you play bad games as a kid and you don't realize they're bad because they're yours and you're having fun in these worlds and your imagination's filling in all the gaps. Your imagination fills in every single gap that the game can't. And that is awesome. That's why we love them, and that's why when we revisit them, we're like, remasters are really cool because they remind us what we thought the game looked like.
That's where that's why remasters are nice, because like when you play a remastered game, it's like, oh, this is how I remember it. This is like when I played, like an example, like you play like Twilight Princess HD, and it's like, oh, this is how it was, and it really wasn't. Like it's a little tweak. And like when you, like, I'm sure people that are playing Crash Bandicoot, the new remastered one, they're like, oh, this is what it looked. No. That's not how it looked. It looked pretty bad. Back then, it looked great. You know what I mean? Like, go back and look at the Metal Gear games. Like, in my mind, I think of the original Metal Gear Solid for the PS1, and in my mind's eye, it looked great. It looked like what we play now in Metal Gear. But no, it's bad. Like, Snake didn't even have a face. It was just like basically a white face with like a line to his nose, and like little indentations for his eyes. It was like, at the time, it was like, that is amazing, and it's not amazing at all. Like, it's like, you look at what Kojima did with 5, and it's mind-blowing, like, it's amazing to see what they're able to accomplish, with gaming today. And Toby said, me and Toby had this conversation a little while ago, where it was like, I don't think it can get any better than this. And I agree at some degree. I'm like, but then they come out and it's like every generation you go, it can't get no better than this. It can't get no better than this. And it does. Like, I remember playing Mario 64 and thinking, like, it will never get better than this. This will be the best. Now I go back and look at Mario 64 and I'm like, that is horrible looking. Like, that just looks bad. And it's like when you go through them phases and it's like, wow, but I think that like it's amazing to see like what companies like Sony and them have, like when you look at Naughty Dog and you look at Kojima, what they're able to produce is just mind blowing. It just blows my mind to see that stuff's coming out.
Two things, because I want to talk about Mario 64, and then I do want to talk about Kojima and Iwata and Miyamoto, because I think those are three names we should mention.
Okay.
But I was talking about the idea of like it can't get any better than this. It was a real threat during the initial HD era of TVs. I remember quite seriously conversations with Cliff Bleszinski when they were shipping Gears of War 1, and they were worried about the uncanny valley, because Gears 1 was the first graphics powerhouse of the 2006 and on genre. And then people were like, whoa, how much better can it get? Because our eyes will not believe a video game unless they do certain tricks. They cannot run a certain video game at a certain frame per second, otherwise your brain will not believe it. They can't do certain things. They have to purposely default certain aspects of visual fidelity so that you don't get tricked. And that's the problem with VR right now. You can't run VR and speed without yourself getting without common people getting sick. And then there's people who will get sick regardless. But they have to make sure that there's problems with your image so that you don't get tricked into believing it's real, which is going to be fascinating with consoles becoming more like PCs, where people can kind of jury-rig them to run an overclock at a speed and then run it on an 8K monitor, whereas 4K is becoming our standard. We still don't have a standard 4K yet. I know Dave Moore was talking about that on the latest Xbox Drive, and he's right, because HDR is weird. We don't know what that means yet. Yeah. But the uncanny valley, not believing that it's a video game. How many times have we done that? We watched in Nintendo 64 era, we played Shadows of the Empire. It had a Hoth level where we flew around in snow speeders. We did the same thing in Super Nintendo and Atari, and we were like, every time we were like, oh my gosh, better. But then Rogue Squadron comes out, and we're like, wait, this is the same Hoth level, but it looks way better on the same tech. That's cool. And we started to realize, wait, how much better can it get? But we say that every time, and we're consistently surprised. And I won't be surprised, but I will be impressed.
That's the thing.
We'll be impressed.
I think at this point, I don't think we could be surprised. I think it's basically to the point now where it's just like, although, man, I got to be honest with you. Like, I looked at Uncharted 4. It shocked me how good it looked. You know, like, that game is picture perfect. Like, there was numerous times I just, like, stopped to just admire the scenery. And it's crazy to just imagine that. Like, and then same with Breath of the Wild. Like, there was times I would just stop and look out and be like, this is gorgeous. This is mind-blowing. But two totally different reasonings, because I feel like with Breath of the Wild, it's more like a painting. And with Uncharted 4, it's more like the realism. You're getting sucked into the realism and stuff. So it's like, this is nuts. But I don't think, like you said, I don't think that it's how much better, how shocking can it be? And I don't really think it can get shocking anymore, because we're at the point where it's just like, okay, you're going to expect the next generation to outdo this generation, and so on and so forth. And it's pretty cool to see how far they've come. You know, like when I look at, again, going back, like I look at the Nintendo 64, the PS1 era, they weren't amazing. They were good, you know, but like when I look back at it, when I look back, I just go, wow, that stuff looks bad now. You know, like a prime example is like when I was talking about like what you remember stuff looking like, and that's what you believed it looked like, is Final Fantasy VII Remake. Like, when I saw the remake, in your mind, you think, like, oh, this is what it looked like. No, not even close. But that's what you remember it looking like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's kind of...
Our imagination's filled in those gaps.
Yes. It's what we think we remember.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Right, and one of the cooler things, and for anyone that is interested in just tech and how you produce images, PlayStation ran at a 32-bit console, where it was 64, obviously the 64-bit. But they generated 3D images very differently. And there are plenty of games running on PlayStation 1 that look far better than their Nintendo 64 counterparts. Yeah. And they did that because they would get static images to run in the background, similar to parallax scrolling on the 16 and 16-bit generations. But they would like Resident Evil, beautiful backgrounds. You couldn't move worth a darn. You had this tank control, and you're barely able to move because you had a static field of play. Whereas Nintendo 64 games were either clouding out their backgrounds, so you didn't have to have a draw distance, or they created this world in 3D and you moved about it. Mario 64, a good example of that. What you saw was created in-engine, and then everything else was just kind of clouded in the background. Yeah. PlayStation created beautiful images in the background, but they didn't move and they weren't part of the actual game. They just existed back there. And that's kind of a cool thing. And that's why Kojima is considered so brilliant. His Metal Gear Solid was just such a master of visual, I guess you would say visual storytelling with less power, but at the same time more tools. And being on a CD also gave them a different memory skill set, so they could manipulate memory in a different way than Nintendo could on those cartridges. Yeah.
The thing of it is, and not many people know this. I mean, the story came out now recently in the past couple of years, but when the original Metal Gear was on the NES, Kojima didn't work on that one. Basically, Konami was making that behind the scenes, behind his back, and it was a different version. It was a ported version of another game he did on a computer system.
MSX? Was it the MSX?
Yeah, the MSX. And so he basically, they made it without him knowing, and when in interviews, he hates that version. They changed a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things that is different in that game as opposed to the original version. But growing up, like, I loved that game. Like, that was Metal Gear to me, and I loved it a lot. And I was so, I kind of wish that, like, Virtual Console would bring that back so we could play it again, because I just love that game. That game is really, really good. Oh,
what was that thing you mentioned? The virtual.
Just stop it. Stop it.
I'm unfamiliar with this term. On Xbox we can play, hundreds of titles from previous systems, and actually, if you buy a game on Xbox, it goes forward, and you can play it on your next one. But
okay, so here's
this
the thing.
Virtual Console thing.
Here's the thing. There's a difference between amazing games that stand the test of time, and like
Knights of the Old Republic.
No, stop. Stop. Mm-hmm. No. Like Super Mario Brothers, Super Mario Brothers 2, 3, like World.
Right. I've bought those games.
Listen, let's get into this, because now you tweaked me enough.
What time are you on with Dave, real quick?
At 10 o'clock.
Are you on with 10 o'clock? Okay, so we have plenty of time if need be.
Yeah. Well, not really. We got 30 minutes left. Because I have another thing. I have a meeting. I have a meeting I have to do in 30 minutes. So, but here's the thing. I think we'll get Virtual Console. It's just a matter of when. And I think it's more Nintendo's trying to figure out how to present it this time as opposed to other times. Where I think they're hearing people where it's basically the complaint of, look, I'm tired of buying Mario for the 10th time. Like, come on. It's one of those situations of, like, how do we balance this to make it work? And I think that is a lot to why they... Like, if you listen to Nintendo, it's weird. Nintendo talks in code. So when you listen to Reggie say something, you need to take it and kind of pull it apart to what he's saying. So when you listen to him talk about in the past, in the beginning of the year, when you listen to him talk about, like, we hear you talking about you're tired of buying things, like, multiple times and all that, and then they come out and there's no Virtual Console at the launch of the Switch, it basically tells me, like, okay, this is where they're trying to figure out how to do this properly. Because the one thing that it seems to me that Nintendo's doing well right now is they may make mistakes, but they take in the input and then they redirect. And some examples are, like, the app. People were complaining that, like, if you shut to go to a text, it would kick you out of chat. That doesn't happen anymore. We can't use USB headsets on the Switch. We can do that now. Like, there's all these little things that they're starting to implement, and it's almost like they're listening to the input, and then they're going, okay, we're going to redirect now. We're going to fix. So I feel like the whole delay on the Virtual Console is more of, we need to do it right. We don't have the opportunity to half bake it or do it wrong. It's got to be right from the start. How do we do it? Do we do it as a Netflix, as you hear the Nintendo dads talk about a lot, or is it, like the thing that Xbox has right now with the Game Pass or whatever, where you pay X amount and you get, like, we rotate games in, which is kind of like a Netflix thing, or is it a thing where you buy your games and you own them for good? You know what I mean? Like, is it this is your final time to buy? Is it a thing where you go like, hey, we're going to have you merge your Wii U and your 3DS, and all those games you've already bought automatically come over? Like, I think there's a bigger thing here that they have to answer. It's not as easy as, like, let's just turn it on and go. Because you run the risk of, yeah, you turn it on and go, and there's a bunch of guys out there like you that would be happy to go in and buy because you haven't bought these games a lot of times. Like, you didn't have a Wii U, correct? Or you did?
No, I did, and respectfully, I did buy those games on Wii U.
Okay.
I bought them on my DS Lite, DSi, one of my, that's for 418 DSs.
Mm-hmm.
I bought, I did buy them multiple times, and I with due credit to Nintendo for creating fine games. I don't give them the credit that I think you're giving them. I think rather than having this grandiose plan and being so strategic, rather, I think they're simply behind the times. We've seen from multiple manufacturers and publishers, there are methods to unified paid accounts, unifying accounts so that once you purchase your titles, they are yours. I don't see an issue with why it's taking them so long, and I don't give them the credit for handling their backlog well. That said, I'm not removing credit from their incredible job turning their company around.
Yeah.
Switch, Odyssey, Breath of the Wild. But I do think what Games Pass from Xbox, the idea of a Netflix, is just for anyone who's old. This is Sega Channel. This is Sega Channel. Mm-hmm. If anyone's ever heard of that, it's just that idea. EA Access is a good example of doing this in modern times. Simply put, whatever it is they're doing, they're dragging their feet, and they're dragging their feet either voluntarily or out of ignorance. And if they're doing it voluntarily and it's a business decision, fine, respect it. You have, in my opinion, Nintendo has far more failings in the past decade than successes business-wise. But right now they are on an uptick that is just incredible. They and Microsoft have both turned their companies around in the past 3-4 years from where we thought they were going to be. Because there was a very real fear that the Xbox brand and the Microsoft publishing group would just send to Sony and Nintendo. There was a very big fear that Nintendo might do the same thing to the others. Mm-hmm. They've blown up and turned it around tenfold, and I'm very proud to support both of them because I do. And Sony, I was on board with them when they launched PS4. I was a day one PS4 buyer. Mm-hmm. I absolutely loved their Gamers First initiatives, and I feel like they are now regressing, which is typical in industry trends and economic trends. You see ebbs and flows for companies. But to go specific to Virtual Console, they need to get it together and commit. A Nintendo 64 Classic without licensed games is ugly. It just doesn't look good. It won't work. It's another box on the shelves that we don't need. But Super Nintendo Classic, I'm very glad they had more. I'm very glad they did better by their customers. I'm very glad there's more coming. I'm very glad to see that because there are people who wanted it. I was too jaded after the Nintendo Classic and not being able to gift one to anyone who did want it. It's frustrating. And in a world of that terrible dreaded E word of emulation, you can't drag your feet with that. You need to do right by your customers because there are many great Nintendo fans and many customers like myself who will give you money if you do right by them. That scares me, the idea that my Switch can't play those games. Why not? Why not? You have a gold mine. You have a way of unifying accounts. My Nintendo does exist now, and it looks better. I'm playing Mario Run, and that can be linked to my Switch, and that can be linked to my accounts. It's there.
Yeah.
Your infrastructure is not perfect, but it's better. Let's get it together, guys.
Well, I think the thing too is that you also have to recognize that like the difference between Xbox and Nintendo is Xbox talks to one company, Xbox. Nintendo of America has to deal with Japan, and Japan pulls the strings. So what Nintendo America wants doesn't necessarily mean that's what Japan's willing to give right now. So I think that's a lot of stuff where they're going back to Japan,
which is a flaw, Bobby.
Well,
which is a flaw because
it may be a
Japan
flaw, but you got to remember it's a Japanese company. You're talking about two different
but
companies.
That Japanese market dictated a lot of things, rightfully so, in 1985 and 1992, and when Nintendo was niche, I suppose, to the modern big consumer in the Americas and in Europe and whatnot. But now it's switched. It's simply switched. Then Microsoft has no play in the Asian markets, none.
Yeah,
like you could fart in the wind. They don't exist, and they're just fine financially.
Yeah. Well, they're also just fine. They're also just fine financially because Microsoft is a bigger conglomerate than Nintendo is. You know, they have more going for them. Well, yeah, the gaming is just now starting to turn profitability. Because they're starting to get wise. Like, listen to the early goings where they were just dropped money and go do what you got to do. Like, it's insane the budgets they were given in the early goings, and now they have to stand on their own 2 feet, so to speak. And Phil Spencer, to his credit, has turned the tide on all that stuff. So my thing is this: you got to look at it like this. Japan, as a culture, is pretty behind the times in terms. So recognizing that, and if you recognize that and you go, like, you look at what isn't allowable in the United States, and then what is allowable in Japan, it's night and day. You know what I mean? In terms of like the way they treat women and stuff like that. Like, a lot of stuff that they do would not fly here. And that's why a lot of these games take a while to get here too, because of the translation and all that. Like, they got Fire Emblem's a prime example of that. Like, there's stuff they had to take out of Fire Emblem before they brought it to the United States because it wouldn't just fly here. Like, it's weird stuff that they do. So if you read the last interview that was done, I think it was with Rolling Stone magazine, where they were talking about like Splatoon and why do you do limited time on Salmon Run and stuff, and they were like, hey, it's like, that's just Japanese culture. That's what we do. This is the way we do it. Like, in Japan, it's more like you get what you're given, not you don't dictate. In Japan, the consumer doesn't dictate. And I think it's a matter of Nintendo America trying to explain to Japan, like, look, guys, this is what we need. This is what has to happen. And I think a lot of it why it's taking a while for things to happen, where in Xbox world, it's a different thing. Like, you're catering to one market, essentially. And it's whatever you want to do, you do. And it's no big deal. If Nintendo America dictated what happens here, and that's all that happens here, it's a different ballgame, I feel. Because I feel at that point, now Nintendo just goes, okay, we're going to do this, you're going to do this, and we're going to get what we're going to get. Which, by the way, from talking to people that have knowledge to Nintendo and stuff, it's kind of why the Wii U flopped. Oh, yeah. Coming out the gates, there was a miscommunication between the two. Nintendo America was going to carry the ball and carry the torch. The miscommunications was Nintendo Japan thought it was going to be kind of family friendly, and Nintendo America wasn't telling them it's going to be more hardcore, which is why they went Zombie U, Mass Effect, all the Assassin's Creed, all these more hardcore games hit at the launch of the Wii U. Nintendo America, or Nintendo Japan, is marketing it totally different. It flops, and then Nintendo America gets slapped down and put in a corner, because if I don't know how close attention you were paying at the time, Reggie lost a position in the company, and Iwata then became president of America as well as Japan, and it was a little bit different at that time. So I think that's why when the Switch came, it was totally, this is our show. We're doing what we want to do. Everything's going to flow through Japan. Now that there's some success and things are going differently, I think you're going to start to see kind of like the strings getting released a little bit. I don't feel, me personally, like I look at conversations I had with Sean. If Nintendo botches Virtual Console, they lose customers. And what I mean by that is you have a big portion of people like Sean Capri who are sick of rebuying games over and over and over again. If you don't handle this right, now granted, there should be a unified account system and all that stuff, and I totally believe it is in the works, it is coming, just because of, that's what I think DNA was brought in to do. DNA was brought in to kind of like make it all in one, and, you know, it's going to be kind of interesting to see how that moves forward. When you're looking at companies like this, the other thing that I feel like Nintendo kind of gets a bad rap for in terms of like when you're comparing to Xbox, to them, like Xbox, that's all they know. That's their world. That's what they live in. Nintendo is a toy maker that makes games. They don't know. They're still learning the internet, the infrastructure, all that stuff. Like, granted, they should have picked it up. But by the way, they also had a whole generation where Xbox and Sony were doing HD, and Nintendo was like, no, HD, nobody's going to buy HD. Nobody cares about HD. And then, by the way, they were absolutely wrong. So, it's a different world. I mean, honestly, if you look at it, like, the Switch is successful just because they're catering to two markets. They're catering to Japan with the handheld side. They're catering to the United States and Europe more for the home console thing. And I think that's where some of the confusion comes in. Like, granted, I would love for Nintendo to just flip a switch and be like, okay, this is all cross-buy, this is the way it's going to be, blah, 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 and be done with it. As a Nintendo fan, I know that's not reality in their world. And it's sad, you know what I mean? Like, it's annoying at times, but at the same time, I just feel like they'll get it at some point, but by that point, we'll be further ahead. You know what I mean? Like, it'll be a different ball game. Like, it's kind of sad. It's I get frustrated with, here's a prime example. Why is it that Metroid, we'll use Metroid as an example. Metroid comes out, Samus Returns, comes out in 3 marketplaces. Why is it Europe gets this really cool collector's edition, right? United States gets nothing, right? Japan gets cool stuff. United States gets nothing. Like, it was, 2 years ago, the Super Famicom 3DS comes out, right? It's cool looking. We're just getting it now, 2 years later. Like, it's like, why do they operate as 3 different companies? I don't understand that. Like, operate as one single company. Whatever happens in Japan, I think that's why Sony has a lot of success. It's because what happens in Japan happens across the world. And that's where Nintendo... Go ahead.
When you look at Nintendo, they strike me as minimum 10 years behind when it comes to a number of facets.
Absolutely.
But the parts that are working really hard to be, for lack of a better term, modern, and modern is a relative idea, it's approximation because we're all moving in these different paces. But it's the kids that have taken over that division. The yous and I's who, if you and I had gone through career routes that would have taken us through games, we would be making, and we were smarter and better looking and capable of creating things, we'd be making and marketing Odyssey and Breath of the Wild. That's the new breed, right? But the new breed is not everywhere. Miyamoto's word is still the word of the sage, and the late Iwata was, I think, starting to come around on the idea that, oh, we're a little behind, guys. And so we have this juxtaposition of no virtual console, no unified account, but Mario Run exists. And side note, Mario Run, whilst overpriced on the initial buy-in, is a fantastic title.
Absolutely.
Who knew? Like, I didn't, because I was certainly a pessimist and like, why would I pay $10 for it's a tap game? But then once I got it on gift, and I was like, oh my goodness, there's way more here than I expected. And then we have Odyssey, Breath of the Wild, and there's this idea. But then what do we get? We get Splatoon 2, this fantastic 1.5 of Splatoon 1. Sorry, guys, it is. But we get that fantastic title.
Why do you gotta take little jabs? Why do you have to just say your stuff, man? Don't you always like you say something in your backhand, man? You're like
fantastic title, but
you're like my grandma that used to walk by and say something nice and then backhand me on the way by. Like, come on, man.
No, it's a great game. It's a great game. It's just like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe exists, Splatoon Deluxe exists. It's fantastic.
Stop it.
But then they create this app, and you're like, what are you doing? And so they're one hand not talking to the other. And by the way, Pinky Toe gets a say. What? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And so it's there. Nintendo is not yet to the point where they can be the primary console as opposed to the secondary console for the hardcore gamer. That doesn't mean they can't do it for a lot of people. I know that several of the Nintendo dads whom I adore, like I think Zach and Eric and Marty and Justin, like those guys live and die by Nintendo. That's their main thing. Rock on, do it. I know you're primary Nintendo, but you have PS4 in the background, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Most of us have to have at least two. We have to have our Nintendo branded content, and then we have to have our whatever HD twin box. And that's starting to change because Xbox and Sony are now moving in different directions with one, how they attack 4K, how they attack backlog library, how they attack forward compatibility along with backward compatibility. So I'm excited because now we're starting to see 3 branches as opposed to 2. But I would love to see Nintendo nullify their portable pillar that needs to go away in favor of a mobile pillar. And what I mean by that is you need to continue your trend into the mobile market. We're seeing that Animal Crossing, Mario Run, Fire Emblem Heroes. Is it Heroes? There's 418 Fire Emblem games. They have more Fire Emblem games than you do podcasts, but it's awesome. But they're doing a great job with mobile because all of those titles, from what I can tell, are good. Pokemon Go is not a Nintendo product, but it's a Nintendo perceived product. They're doing a good job there. Start phasing out 3DS. My brother just shipped off to the military. It has to. It has to. Because Switch has... they entered Switch tepidly, and they were like, okay, if this is good, guys, all right, no one's saying anything, but we can go ahead and go back to 3DS if we need the money. But if Switch is good, we can move forward. And I was surprised to see Metroid 2 didn't have that Switch, alongside with it as a test title. Pardon me. Because Metroid 2, excuse me. Sorry, guys, I didn't mean to blow your mics. But Metroid 2 is an absolute fan service game. It is the mirror's edge of Nintendo titles. I love Metroid. I don't know if you can see on screen where it is, but I have both Samus Amiibo. I love Metroid on my Wii U, which I gifted to a family who that they needed more games. They just did for their kids. But on that Wii U was every Metroid title that was available on Virtual Console, plus Metroid Prime Trilogy. I love Metroid. I just do. It's such a cool environment. I mean, it's aliens, but it's not, and it's got so much to it. I'm shocked Metroid 2 didn't launch alongside a Switch counterpart. That said, I think we'd be foolish to think that Metroid 2 Samus Returns doesn't launch somehow on Switch.
I'm
I
sure
think
at
we'd be
some point
foolish
it
to think
does.
that.
I think
Yeah.
also what people have to remember is how every console doesn't get killed like that. Like the PS3 stuck around for about a year after the PS4 launched. Like Xbox 360 stuck around for a while after Xbox One launches. It's the same thing in theory. And if you remember coming off of the Wii U, people were basically saying, if this doesn't launch, Nintendo has to fall back to the 3DS. I think Nintendo felt like that. I feel like right now, this moment, this is the official launch of the Switch. I think the last 6 months, we've been beta testers and kind of showing what works, what doesn't work. With the launch of Mario, this is the true launch of the Switch moving forward. Zelda was for Nintendo fans and the hardcore to kind of get. We were the ones that were going to beat the drum and scream from the rooftops how awesome Switch was. We were the ones that were going to sell it out and make it look like, oh my god, this is a little bit bigger of a thing than it really is. It blew 2 million units out in the first couple of weeks. And I think that now we're going to start to see what is legit as things move forward. I think now you're going to get another 6 months of 3DS titles, and then it's going to go away. I think by March, you'll see it kind of silently just disappear. Right now, they're trying to push as much out as they can. And by the way, every handheld console that Nintendo's ever had, like as it was dying, they started flooding all these special editions out the gates. Like the Game Boy Micro, and then like that little Game Boy Advance was like a little tiny cube and stuff. So that's where we're going to start seeing all this stuff hitting now, because it's a cash grab. It's a last minute cash grab. We have all this extra product. Let's just get them out the door and do what we're doing. But I think by March, 3DS is gone. We're done with it. And moving forward, that's where everything happens.
I would love to hear them. Pardon me for cutting you off, but I would love to hear them to just say, all right, as of X date, we're no longer going to produce 3DS units, but we'll still support until Y date. Yeah. And let's be honest, GameStop alone, for their ups and downs and whatever gamers may perceive them as, they could keep that system afloat for 2, 3, 4 years running. Yeah. And I think Nintendo would still see profits from that. Not necessarily from new content purchased hardware-wise, but people buying digital titles, seeing their rewards be used, and just as a lead-in to, oh, I like my 3DS because my little Johnny, can beat the crap out of it. Yeah. But I'm a dad, but I'm a young dad. Maybe I want the Switch. Maybe I want Odyssey. Maybe I want to put Odyssey. I think that's likely what we're going to see. And I truly hope that Nintendo continues with their Wii U remasters, because there are so many titles stranded on Wii U. I want to speak my blasphemy while I'm on your live show. Mario 64, didn't think it was very good, and I love and adore Super Mario 3D World on Wii U. I love and adore it. I'm surprised by the hate that it gets. It doesn't make sense. And Super Mario Brothers U, how great would it be to see a pack-in with Super Mario Brothers U and Super Mario Brothers Wii? Because they are Super Mario Brothers U is the 1.5 that Splatoon 2 is to Splatoon. And I say that respectfully because they're great titles. You bundle them, package them.
It's so hard, too. Super Mario Bros. U is so hard compared to Wii. Like, it is night and day. And I want to see, I like that idea of a deluxe. For a deluxe, for me, I would like to see Super Mario Bros. Wii, Super Mario Bros. U, and Luigi U all combined into one as a deluxe. That would be good. The other thing I really want to see is Then you can do Galaxy.
Then you can do Galaxy.
Yeah.
I
don't think they're going to do Galaxy. I don't think that's going to happen. Sadly.
You get stuck by the controls? I think it's the controls have stuck it?
No, I think it's going to be more that they're just going to drop it on a virtual console eventually. Miyamoto's basically said he doesn't want to do HD remasters and stuff for the Mario world. So until he kind of fades out of the picture, I don't think we see that happen. But what I really want to see happen is...
Either is fine. So long as they're not stranded in history.
Oh, no. They won't be stranded in history. They're coming to virtual console, guarantee. The one thing I want to see is 3D World with Captain Toad combined as a deluxe. That those two blend well together, and one's a prequel to the Captain Toad's a prequel to Super Mario Brothers 3D Land or 3D World. So I would love to see that, man. I'd be all for it.
All right, so I've not played Odyssey, and so this is not a spoiler. This is speculation from someone who does not know. Mm-hmm. I would be willing to bet somewhere in there's Captain Toad Easter eggs that hint towards a future of Nintendo recognizing that Captain Toad is important. Maybe that's not a new game. Maybe it's a small game. Maybe it's a mini game. What have you. But I would be willing to bet somewhere in Odyssey there is a Easter egg. And that's not
Captain Toad's all throughout it. Yeah, Captain Toad is in it. Yeah, yes. He's It's not. He's doing what he does. He shows up and gives Mario stuff. You know what I mean? So It's kind of cool to see that he's a part of it and he's there. There's a lot of really amazing Easter eggs in that game. I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. When everything basically pushes through. So
I'm excited.
Yeah, I can't wait for you to try it. I can't wait to hear your opinion on it. Luke, thank you so much for coming on, man. This has been a long time coming.
Such a blast, man. Thank you for letting me come back, especially with my perceived absence. I've been watching all your content, but it seems like I'm not there because I'm not there live. And so know that I love you. I love all the shows you do. I can't keep up with all of them, but I watch so much of it. It's such a pleasure to see people taking joy in their games, and as much joking as I hear us do about our console and this console and Microsoft, Sony. The simple fact is we're gamers and we love it, and we have a community that's enjoying games, and that's cool.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I listen. If you listen to one thing that I do, I appreciate it. So, thank you for all that you know. I appreciate it wholeheartedly. You have no idea. So, real quick, anybody that wants to follow Luke, I have his Twitter handle up there, MLS Reserves, and go give him a follow on the Twitters, and you can hear all his zany backhanded compliments to Nintendo all the time. So
lately, it's all phases. Everything's a phase.
Yeah. So you say, whatever, man, whatever. We're on to you. We're on to you big time. Anyway, that is all. We will be back in an hour. We'll have Dave Moore on from Day Space and all that good stuff. But thank you guys for coming out, hanging out. I will see you guys all in an hour. That is all. Peace out, Preston.